Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. It is DaVinci Resolve tutorial time, and we're doing a follow-up to sort of our in-depth look at all the different panes and windows inside DaVinci Resolve. This week we are doing Fusion, which has been requested by quite a few, but today we're going to go through and I'm going to go show you the basics of Fusion inside DaVinci Resolve, and we're going to do a quick little tracking exercise as well, just to show you how it all works. So stay tuned for that. All right, so before we get started into the tutorial, I'm gonna go through a quick sort of overview of what you can expect in this video, and time codes will be linked in the description below. If you wanna skip ahead and you don't wanna skip all the huff and fuff, you can just check those time codes out and jump ahead to that straight away. So in this video, I'm gonna go through what Fusion actually is, what it's used for, and then gonna go through the Fusion window and go through the basic layout and all the different tools that are available, and there are a lot available, so that will take a little bit of time. And then once we've gone through that, we're actually gonna go in and do a quick text tracking tutorial, something that a lot of people will do, which is tracking text to objects, or tracking the camera and adding text to footage, something we all do a lot of. So I thought we'd do a quick tutorial on that so you can see how it all works together. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video. If you do, you wanna hit that thumbs up button. So let's start off with what Fusion is. So Fusion is actually a separate piece of software, also owned by Blackmagic, and it is a visual effects compositing software similar to Adobe After Effects. They both do the exact same thing. The difference between the two is After Effects is a layer-based editing system and Fusion is a node-based editing system. Now, what that basically means is that in After Effects, you have layers just like you would in Photoshop, and the top layer affects everything underneath it. Nodes work a little bit differently because they're all independent and they don't work in a hierarchy as such. But how nodes work is everything in this scene is its own sort of little container or node, and those containers will have inputs and outputs, and you can just plug things into random things all over the place, and you don't need to worry about what's on top because everything is independent. That sounds complicated. That's why we're doing the tutorial at the end, to sort of go through what it is like and how it works when actually editing something. What's great about Fusion is the fact that Blackmagic obviously realized that going back and forth between your editing software and your compositing software is something a lot of us do, and they wanted to get rid of that middleman, and so they've integrated it directly into DaVinci Resolve. Now, it isn't the full Fusion software, but I would say it's about 90% of what you get with the standalone software, so pretty much good for the majority of us. And it'd be the same as having Premiere Pro have After Effects built in without needing to do the dynamic link. The benefits for us is that it's just one bit of software utilizing the resources of the computer rather than having two bits of software open, so better performance for us. So now we're going to jump into computer and look at Resolve. So now we're actually going to jump into computer and look at Fusion. So we're going to create a new project. We're just going to call it Fusion Tutorial because why not? And obviously it opens to the editing page. Now, Fusion is this little magic wand here. So we're going to click over to it. And it does take a little bit longer to load than the other windows because it is a lot more resource intensive. All right, and here we have the Fusion window, and yours should look pretty similar to this. I'm not 100% sure if this is the default window space, but it should be pretty close. And hopefully, if you've watched any of my other tutorials, this looks pretty familiar because Blackmagic has kept a really clean design language across the whole software, making it really easy to follow. So starting from left to right, we have our media pool. Again, exact same as every other window that we've been in DaVinci Resolve. We have access to all our media. We can also import directly from here, create bins and all that stuff, and create new Fusion compositions if we want to. Moving on from that, we have our effects library. This is where we can access all the tools available for creating effects inside of DaVinci Resolve. And then we also have other things. You might not have this because I have DaVinci Resolve Studio, but these are also built-in effects, and we also have some templates as well. Again, if you have the free version, you might not have some of these, but they're there anyway. Closing the effects library, we have our clips window. Again, this just will show a timeline down the bottom here of every single cut we have in our footage. I don't find it particularly useful to have open in Fusion, but if you're doing a lot of visual effects heavy work, you might. Then we have the nodes tab, and that's going to open and close the bottom part down there. That'll become more prevalent later on. Moving over to the right-hand side, we have a few more. So we have our spline editor. This is in relation to animations and having more finite control over it. We will not be looking into that today, but we will at some point, so ignore it for now. Keyframes is the exact same. When animating, obviously you set keyframes to set positions and rotation and all that to animate objects. Again, we will not be looking into that today either, but it's there if you need it. Metadata, if you've been following along, you know that this will show the information of the media clip we have selected, whether that's a clip, an image, or a piece of music, that will show up here. And then the inspector is going to have all the options and controls for the individual objects we have selected in the scene. Again, exact same as every other window in DaVinci Resolve, which is awesome. And these little arrows here, as we've explained in the very first tutorial, just drop these windows all the way down so you can have access to more. I like to have mine smaller because I like to have a larger node tree area. So you can see here that we have two viewers, and this is very similar to the editing page where if I close the inspector, we would have a source viewer as well as sort of what's in the timeline viewer. That's because when editing in Fusion, you are doing multiple things at once. You're generally working with video clips as well as effects like text or particles. And so you want to be able to view them at the same time. So basically this is your first viewer and second viewer, and you can control it independently. We will show you that in a little bit, so don't fret too much. Then obviously we have our timeline here with our frames. This is just set to the default, but when you import media to create a new Fusion clip, it will automatically adapt to the length of that footage. If you've still stuck around, moving down, we have this toolbar here, and this is just access to quick functions that you would find up here in the effects library where the tools are. So you can see here we have 3D blur, we have text and all that sort of stuff here. And that's what all this is. So you can see we have a text 3D. As you can see here, we have text 3D, so that would create 3D text, 3D shapes, particle systems, all the things there. That's just literally just a quick action little toolbar area, but there is a faster way to access this. So as you can see here, we have this one here, which is text plus. This is just 2D text, and this is something that you'd use quite frequently. But the easiest way to actually access this, in my opinion, is to, on a Mac, press Command, Shift, and then Spacebar. And this is gonna bring up pretty much just a search engine, and you type what you want. So if you want text, you type TEXT, and you can see all the actions that have text in it. So we have our 2D text, we also have our 3D text, and we can click on that and it will create it for us. But we'll go into that a little bit more later. But like I said, that is Command, Shift, Spacebar, or Control, Shift, Spacebar on Windows. All right, so now we're gonna do a quick text tracking exercise just to show you how Fusion actually works. So the first thing we're gonna do is gonna jump over to our edit page. I'm gonna import some footage. So just Command I, and I'm gonna just do it from a folder here. We're just gonna import this bit here. And yeah, let's just change the frame rate for this one. So now I've got this bit of footage here. Nothing special, just from this last review I did of the ViewSonic M1. You can check the link up above if you want to check that video out. And so we have this nice sort of panning shot here of the projector. So what we're going to do is we're going to set an in and out point just by hitting I. I'm going to scrub through, and I think that looks good there. Hit O, and then I'm only going to drag the video because I don't want the audio. We're just going to drag that down there on the timeline, stretch it out. So now that we have the footage on our timeline, we can start to look at bringing it into Fusion. Now there's a few ways we can do that. We can right click over here and create a new Fusion composition, and it's gonna create a new composition clip, and then we have to manually import the footage into that. But the easiest way to do it is to select the piece of footage you want to create a clip for, right click on it, and then go new Fusion clip. That's gonna change the name of it to Fusion clip, and create a Fusion clip up in the master bin. And if we head over to Fusion now, you can see we have two nodes set up. So let's start editing. Under here on the media out, you can see if I select a node that we get these two dots here. Black means that these are currently not visible. These two black dots here refer to our viewer windows here. As you can see on the media out one, which is the final rendered image, we have a white dot on the right hand side, and that's because it's viewable in the right hand viewer. If I wanted to view it in the left hand viewer, I can do two things. I can click on the node and then drag it over into the viewer and release. Now you can see we have two white dots. That's because it's currently visible in both viewers, and I can scrub through it like so. there's an easier way to do that, and that is just by hitting the numbers 1 and 2. 1 referring to this window, 2 referring to this one. So if I get the media out one, hit 2, it's going to turn on and off this viewer, and I'm hit 1, it'll turn that one off. Now I can hit the media in, hit 1, and now this is what we're putting into Fusion, and this is what we will get out. It's all very, very complicated, but it is more straightforward than you think. So the way Fusion works with the nodes is it's like a tree, and luckily there are arrows to point what direction you're heading. The media in is, like I said, this is the first bit of clip heading into Fusion. Media out is what we receive at the end. So the first thing we need to do is track this footage so that we have some information to attach to some text. So we can do that a few different ways. We can select the media clip that we want to track. We can go down to our effects library, to our tools, and down here under T, we have tracking, and then we have 3 different types of tracking. We have a camera tracker, a planar tracker, or just a point tracker. So we could simply click on the tracker, and it's going to automatically add it into our node graph in between the media in and out node. And as you can see, if I click on the tracker, we have our tracking point here and all the information there to look at. But that is the slow way of doing it. So I'm just going to hit delete, and you can see it automatically just remove the node and leave the connection there. And we are going to do that little shortcut I showed you earlier, which is Command Shift Spacebar on Mac or Control Shift Spacebar on Windows. Type in track, and you can see we have our tracker, planar tracker, and camera tracker right there. And if I just, with that one highlighted, hit add, we get the exact same thing. This is the fastest way in order to add tools into your node tree, and I implore you to start using it because it saves you from having to have, all this real estate taken up on your screen when you don't need it. So with the tracker, this works like any sort of visual effects editing software. If you've used it, we have our control point, and this allows us to move the tracker. So I'm actually going to track this bokeh ball here because it's nice and bright. And generally when tracking, we want contrast, we want bright and dark points, so it's easier to track. The way a tracker works is inside this first hard red line box here, which we can size up by using the arrows. This is what we are tracking. Everything in there is what we are tracking. And we can see down here, if I size it, in the tracker information over here, you can see what we are actually tracking. And so what we're gonna do is have it like that. We've got nice contrast there because it's going off the Luma channel. This next box, the dotted box, this is the area in which it searches for that information. This is what we're tracking, and then this is the search area. Generally, if I have it too big, the tracking marker is going to jump around because it's other things that are similar. So you kind of want it a little bit bigger than the first box, but not too big. The bigger it is, the longer it will take. Now that we have our tracker positioned, we can do a few things. On the tracker information in the inspector, which is just only going to pop up if you select the tracker. So if I select the tracker, we get all the information here. Now, when using tracking information, it's important to start at the start of your clip or at the end of the clip, depending on whether you want to track back or forward. We're going to track forward in this instance, so we're going to hit this one here, which you can see will track the whole way forward, and this one here would be if we were in the center of the clip. So we're just going to hit track forward and let it do its thing. As you can see here, it is tracking our bokeh ball very, very well, and we're just going to let it do its thing and skip to the end once it's done. All right, as you can see, the render is complete, and we have a fully tracked. If I go through, you can see that the dot is tracked relatively well. Now there might be a little bit of jumping in this because the bokeh ball is quite large, and so it might not have a fully clean track, but for the purposes of this tutorial, it's going to work pretty well. So we need to add text to this scene, and the easiest way to do that is, hopefully if you've been following along, is Command Shift Space. And you can see here, and obviously it pops up straight away as one of the most popular ones. Now, if you have none of these nodes selected, it's just going to add a blank little node here. And if I select it, I can type my text in the inspector, but there's nothing viewable. And that's because, as you see, if I hover over this, this is not being displayed in any of the viewers. So if I hit 1, you can see it displays there, or if I drag it over into 2, you can see it's displayed there. So we can hit 1, now we can see our text and we can start typing. So let's just call it review, and maybe we're going to do it all in caps. And this is just like any other editing software. You can see we have all our controls here for our text. We have font, so we're going to change font to something different. Let's just say Cooperative Sans. We're going to do black, nice and bold. Change the color to, let's go blue. And as you can see here, we see a live information update here. We're going to maybe the size and the tracking. And we have all these options here in the inspector. You can have a look at that in your own time, but every single tool and object will have all this different sort of information here. And we can even put images in and all this sort of stuff here. Lots of options available. But now we have our text. We want to get it in this scene. You can see here we have our control point, so we can move it around and all that, that's fine. What we need to do is connect the text to the tracker, because as you can see here, the text is not connected to the media or the media out, it's just floating by itself. So we need to put it in. The easiest way to do that is we drag the output of the text node, which is always this gray box here, that is always the output, and we need to drag it onto the tracker. But as you can see here, the tracker has a blue arrow and a green arrow to drag it onto. What do they mean? Basically, every node has a input, output, foreground, and background. That sounds super confusing. The easiest way to remember is blue is background. That's the easiest way I've found to remember. And so what we can do is we don't want this to go into the background, because if it does, nothing's going to happen, because it's going to go behind the media, right? So we don't want that. To remove the arrows, you can just double click and drag them in, double click and drag in. So what we want to do is we want to drag this box here, click and drag, and we want to connect it to the foreground. And as you can see here, nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? That's because this tracking information is doing nothing. Right now it's just a tracker. So what we want to do is go over to the next box in the inspector, which is the operations box. And you can see here operations. If we click the drop down, it will tell us what this is supposed to do. Currently it is set to none. That means nothing is going to happen. This node does 0. We want it to be a match move, because a match move is going to track the information and give us some data to work with. So if we click that, all of a sudden we see the text, because now this node is actually doing something, and with the text connected to the foreground, it will work. And if I play through, you can see here that the text sticks really, really nicely. And this is where we can go through and maybe position the text. So we can select the text node here, and depending on what window you want to work in, we can work in this window, and we can drag the text down there. And now if I hit spacebar, you can see here that the text is tracked relatively well. It floats a little bit, but relatively well to that object. And we have our nice little animation just like so. The beauty of this is we can go to the edit page and it's all done for us right here. We didn't even have to switch programs. It's all in the one program, and that's the benefit of having Fusion inside DaVinci Resolve. That's fine, we can do this in After Effects. What is the benefit of using nodes? Well, if I wanted to say create a drop shadow for this, I could Control C that node and Control V, and what you can see here is it adds another text node, which is right underneath the same one, merges it together with a merge node automatically. I didn't even have to do anything. And then what we can do here is we can create this one as black. If I go to the transform side and rotate it, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the transform to rotate the word, and we're just going to rotate the whichever one makes it flat. So we're going to rotate it on the x-axis down a little bit, maybe tilt it, I don't know, let's go that way a little bit. And we're also going to make it, give it some opacity so it's a little bit see-through. Now we have a bit of a drop shadow, and the same thing, because it's all merged together under the same tracker, it all sticks under the same point, which is really, really cool. And again, if I switch back to the editor, the change is already there. But what if we don't like this tracking information? What if we don't like how it's tracking? Well, I can delete that tracker by hitting delete, and we still keep our text, and we can still view it by putting the merge node in this viewer here, and you can see that it is still available for us to view, but it's not tracked to anything, which means we can select the media in node, add another tracker, and we could go through and track some more information to maybe get a better track. And then again, with the merge output, connect it to the foreground, and then we would see our text again. So it works really, really well. So there you have it, guys. Just a really quick and simple overview of the Fusion window inside DaVinci Resolve 15. Hopefully you found this video really informative and you got a lot out of it. Learning how to quickly track some text to an object, really simple effect, but something we use quite a lot. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment if you want a specific tutorial. I'll try and get it out to you as soon as possible. And until the next video, guys. See ya.